How old were you guys when you had your first kid?
First
Child.
Sarah.
24.
24. Popped him out.
Yeah.
Although the average age of marriage then was probably around 22.
depended on whether you lived in Memphis or not. People went to college to get a husband, and I went to college
To get away.
to get a 4-year education. I got all my requirements for medical technology in the first 2 years, and then I had 2 years of liberal arts.
Lila, I have to say that you asked a very important question, and it deserves a bigger answer, and that is, how do you get along? And the first thing you do is gain respect for each other. And that respect means that you know the truthfulness of the other person. You know the how solid they are on as a reputation, and what the truths or what they feel are important in life. Irma and I came from very similar backgrounds, in that our parents worked hard. And remember, this was Depression. We were born in 1934. That was the year following the worst of the Depression. And the birth rate of our class was the smallest ever.
And if you read Outliers, it talks about why being in that situation makes you so much more likely to be successful.
Yeah, because they actually wanted you to go to
in a
college.
different area.
Yeah,
That was their whole.
colleges were not filling. There weren't enough students. And medical schools, we didn't worry about grades for medical school. It was how to afford it. And the medical school cost $1,000 a year.
That's interesting because they say that you shouldn't buy a house that was built during the Depression because they cheated on the quality of the concrete, the cement, and they held back the material. So maybe you shouldn't have a doctor from that area either.
Not true.
So you came from similar backgrounds. Just want to pick up where we got.
We neither of us came from a religious home. Both our parents were really quite liberal in terms of religion, and there was a kindliness to both sets, and they felt their daughters were queens and should be treated royally, and I was not of royal blood, but Irma stood her ground, and we got along fine.
Another quality, though, was that neither of us had desire for all the finer things in life. We were very comfortable not having the designer clothes and the things that
We didn't have to drive a Cadillac or nobody. There was no such thing as a German car when we
You
growing
lived
up.
next to Detroit.
No, but the World War II knocked out the German car industry.
I have a question. Do you guys have any experiences dealing directly with anti-Semitism? Did that affect your lives growing up?
Very good question.
Well, I was not. Well, start with. I grew up in my grandparents' home. Our family, my grandfather added a second level to the house, and we moved in downstairs. They lived upstairs. My father could not find work in 1934 till the war, 42. In the neighborhood that they lived in, it was all Catholic. But there was this nest of Jews, and we were in just a few streets. and they really tried to convert us. I remember if you only used Ivory soap, you can be converted. Did you hear that story?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, was that an ad or was that something people would
No,
say
no.
to
These
you?
are what these older kids would say to us.
Ah.
You take it. I get
My
started on
my
so many-
experience was a little different. My parents, my mother was the only one of 8 surviving children who was born in this country, and my father was born in New Madrid, and so they were both American born, even though their parents were European and spoke Yiddish and etc. We were virtually the only Jews in this little town, New Madrid, and we never felt any anti-Semitism. My father was the president of the Masonic Lodge, and the Masonics, that's a Catholic offshoot, I think.
It's not
It
Catholic.
was.
They're not really any.
Well, anyway,
But
I
it
had
wasn't.
one incident growing up in the 3rd grade. There was this one boy, he was very tall, he had been kept back a couple of years, and there was something said in class, and he said, "She's just a dirty Jew. What does she know?" And that was in the middle of the class. Well, I burst out crying, and the principal, it must have been 4th grade, because the principal was the 4th grade teacher, Helen Loud Jones. And she said, "Irma, I want you to come down to the office with me." And she said, she gave me this lesson about how the Jews have done all the good things in the world for all the people, and that is something that I can be so proud of. And this person is so uneducated, and don't ever feel that, don't ever
That's
feel
amazing.
lessened for something like
You
that.
should like her on Facebook.
That was the only incident of anti-Semitism I ever felt. However, about 10 years ago, a book came out called The Jew Store. And this was written by the daughter of a Jewish family in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Now we used to take the ferry across the Mississippi to buy our Christmas toys from the jobber in Dyersburg. And Thelma's husband, Ed Greenberg, was from Dyersburg. So there was a little larger group of Jews there. And also the author's parents were first generation, they were Europeans. And she talks about all the anti-Semitism in that town. But she makes it like this is what all Jews suffered. And I was so upset with that book. I have it on my shelf because occasionally it comes up in conversation.
Did
And-
you tell me something about being checked for horns?
Not me, maybe my sister, maybe
Sounds like Louise.
Louis, yeah.
What about something when you were in Las Vegas and something about seeing cabaret with somebody?
Oh,
That
Yeah.
was in Chicago.
I had 2 important German experiences. When I got to Cleveland Clinic,
They didn't allow Jews. There were Jews.
There
Jews
was
could
a-
not
Not
be
many.
doctors.
there was a strict quota system, and they had a pyramid system. They accepted 10 first-year residents, and then 6 second-year residents, and then 2 third-year residents, and 1 4th year. And the 4th year was Sigmund Harder. Sigmund Harder was a honor guard to Hitler at the age of 18, which is a very prestigious post. And after the war, he got to the United States, how I don't know, and he got to Cleveland Clinic as a resident in internal medicine, and I became one of his trainees. And I told him that if I ever made a mistake, I don't care what time of day or night it is, he is to call me. And he did. We became very, very close friends, and he asked me to be his family doctor, which I was. He taught me more about medicine than anybody could imagine. And I always felt he did it to atone for what happened to him as a child, going through the Hitler regime. The second time was after I went into practice in Toledo. As soon as I started my practice, I was called before the hospital medical board. They wanted to hire me to start a training program. And the training program would lead to the American Association of Family Practice. This was started by someone at Harvard, and he wanted 10 programs, and they asked me to run one of the 10 programs. And the person who invited me had a German Luftwaffe pilot who came to Toledo, married, and he and his wife both became family practitioners, and they were eager to have a training program. And this was at Flower Hospital, which was a community like a suburban community in Toledo, and they both worked very hard to get a really good program together, and I ran that program for 5 years. They were very close in practice to me. They sent me all of their rheumatology, and they gave me a salary. When I went into practice, a doctor earned maybe $5,000 a year, and it would be probably 4 or 5 years before I would earn that much, because rheumatology was a very poorly paid practice.
So you didn't feel any anti-Semitism.
No.
But when we went out to dinner in Chicago, we were at a meeting, and we went out to dinner in Chicago with one of them. I think it was Sig Harder.
No. It was,
The one who was a Luftwaffe. I found out he was a Luftwaffe pilot.
That was
I
I
can't
thought
think
it
of
was
his
someone from
name.
Vegas.
Pardon?
I thought it was somebody from Vegas.
no.
Anyway,
I can't think of their
we
names.
had very
We went
long-
to see Cabaret, and it was
I
very
did.
awkward.
I did with yes.
Oh, well, when we went, we saw Cabaret at Stratford some
Many
years
later.
ago, and we're walking out after, and it was so thrilling. It was so fabulous that we were just overcome, and the crowd is thinning out a little bit, and we're talking about it, and these people joined us talking, and one of them said, well, it would have been all right, except it got so terrible at the end. Now, she wasn't talking about terrible because the Nazis were starting to take over. She was talking about terrible because it ruined the beauty of
Harmony.
the show, the harmony of the show. She says, I really didn't like the last act because, I mean,
I don't know what Cabaret
it got
is
too
about.
serious.
It's,
You've never seen Cabaret?
we'll watch it.
Yeah.
It's
We
so good.
have the DVD,
I have it too.
and we have watched it. We used to put it on every New Year's Eve in Toledo,
That's a weird.
and it would just run. We would have people in the house all night, and it would just run all the time, and you would go in and out. But
it's one of my favorite.
it's one of the
all-time
greatest
musicals.
movies ever made.
It's